Good evening, everyone. We've got another live for you this week on a Thursday, slightly later time. But we're going to have Simon come and join us to talk through his digital workflows. A few bits that we want to cover, a bit of cerec stuff, and a bit on his guided surgeries he's been doing recently. So I think it's going to be a really good one. Sweet, we've got people coming in. I hope everyone's had a good day. Looking forward to the bank holiday next weekend. Yeah, we got him in already. Hey.
Hi mate, how's it going?
I'm good, my man. How are you?
Yeah, very well, very well.
Working day, podcasting day, parlour day.
Yeah, no, I've been in the clinic today. Yeah, it's been a busy one. It's been a busy week, but it's I'm sure the same for everyone at the moment. It's just mad with patients.
Non-stop.
So, but that's all good. It's all good. How are things at your end?
Yeah, good. Non-clinical day for me. So I've had a nice, nice easy one. So it's quite nice doing these on a Thursday night because I've just got all day to get ready. So it better be good.
I'm expecting some really deep research from you on me.
Oh yeah.
Like, what's my waist size?
I'll find out on Suit Supply. They've got to save some in the hard drive, haven't they?
Yeah, it's a good shout.
I went the other week to get a suit for a wedding, and I know you get a lot from there. I can just tell that the Suit Supply ones I was there. I was like, I'm going to go the same way here. I'm going to get addicted to it. I can feel it coming.
So they just keep on knocking out. It's like everything they put on there. The emails come through on my email thing. It's like, well,
yes,
obviously I want that.
Absolute nightmare. Well, thanks for doing this, man. I know you're very, very busy, so I really appreciate that.
No worries.
And I think digital is going to be a great topic to go through with you. So for anyone who's lived under a rock on Instagram and doesn't know who you are, just give us a quick little intro, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Simon Chard. I'm a sort of cosmetic and implant dentist, I guess is the way I describe myself nowadays. I co-own a 7-surgery multidisciplinary practice in Staines, just southwest of London, where our mutual friend Harry is a
super associate.
One of my super associates, yeah. And there's Michelle there, one of our amazing hygienists, just saying hello.
There we go.
So Megan and I own that practice. It's got about 27 staff, so it's quite a big operation. And obviously do a lot of digital dentistry there, which we'll talk about tonight. In my spare time, I also have a toothpaste brand, eco-friendly, plastic-free toothpaste brand called Parla toothpaste tabs, which some of you may have seen on Dragon's Den earlier in the year. And I see.
Where's the hat? I was expecting the hat.
Yeah, no, I'm often to be found branding in live events. So that's takes up a lot of my time. Something I'm very, very passionate about, reducing the plastic waste that we cause as dentists, which can be quite prolific sometimes. And then I'm also vice president of the British Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry. And that is something that I'm very passionate about, something that's really helped form who I am as a clinician. And then, as you mentioned, I have a podcast called the One Small Change podcast, which is all about my other passions other than dentistry, really, even though a lot of it filters back into things that are practical for dentists. But it's more around sort of health, wealth, spirituality, routines, really, really interesting guests that we've had on there that are mainly non-clinical. I've only had Rona, Miguel Stanley, and Christian Coachman. So people who are sort of quite multidisciplinary in a non-dental way. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I do a bit of lecturing as well. So that's me.
We're gonna have you on the other end of the podcast microphone today, so that's good. I mean, in terms of digital, I know you do a lot of it. I know you speak for Dentsply, right, on cerec and stuff like that sometimes.
Yes. I'm a KOL for Dentsply, Ivoclar, Invisalign. That's about it at the moment, I think.
You've lost count.
Sweden Martina. I'm lecturing for them at the moment as well.
So where did the digital stuff start for you?
So it came from BACD, to be honest with you. So I was a student rep of the BACD through, this is before your time, Rupert, but before Facebook groups for dentistry even existed.
A better time.
There was a website called dentaltown.com. And I was sort of geeking out on the forums on there every night. And while I was a student, saw that there was a few UK guys on there, Jason Smithson, Ptfe Qureshi, anyway, that led me down a route to seeing, getting Ptfe at King's to give a lecture. He was like, join the BACD. And then I actually see that Paul Abrahams, who's the current president of the BACD, has just joined.
No pressure then.
Paul put me in touch with a lady called Yasmin George, who you may well know. And Yasmin gave me a job straight out of VT, which was in a practice called the Courtyard Clinic. And the chap who owned that practice also owns is a distributor for Cerec. So this was back in 2014, far before the sort of whole digital wave had really settled in. I mean, Cerec's been around since 1983, I think. But the actual sort of big movement towards everyone scanning has only really happened in the last sort of 5 years, I guess. So back in 2014, we were using a Cerec Omnicam. They just bought one for the practice. I was told, this is what you're using for your crown and bridge. Off you go. Pretty stressful, to be honest. Like no real resources of them sort of stuff I could dig out online at that time. Yeah, sort of just got my head around it. I'm quite a techie guy anyway, so saw how powerful it could be. Had my ups and downs with it, because it's pretty stressful when you don't know how to make it work. But yeah, that's how I started with it. And then they got me to start doing like the introductory lecture, because they had a little lecture theatre there. And I would just do that probably like once a month. When I was sort of, I'd only been using it for a year or so, but it was literally like, this is how you turn it on. This is how you like open the software. This is how you scan. And so just gradually like built up my repertoire from there. And yeah, never looked back really. Persuaded my dad to buy one in our practice, then bought another one at our practice, then bought a Prime Scan and an iTero, and then yeah, just got completely obsessed with how much easier digital dentistry is than analog in general.
So in terms of now crown and bridge stuff wise with Cerec, yeah, what proportion are you doing Cerec? Are you doing any lab made implant stuff? Probably, but conventional crowns or onlays, are you doing that all Cerec now, or?
Probably 99%. The only time that I would consider not doing it chairside is I've been doing a case recently, which is a BOPT technique. So a biologically orientated preparation technique case with Eddie Marcoux, who is my main lab tech that I work with, very digitally focused. We'll talk about him a bit later on the guided stuff. But I've used him for that because it's a new technique for me. The main time I would not make something chairside is where I need zirconia, because I don't have a sintering furnace. So it's like
that's the next toy, right?
Yeah, I mean, Dentsply Sirona have a great one, but I can't persuade Megan to let me get another bit of kit. It's the ongoing discussion. It's like, do you really need it? It's like, well, I'd like to make my own bridges in-house, so kind of, yeah.
Why not?
But yeah, it's $7,000, so probably not right now. So yeah, where I need zirconius, which is normally posterior bridge work, or if there's a highly characterized anterior teeth and I'm doing like a single central or something, then I mean, I'm pretty proficient at those, and I've got some nice cases of single centrals, but it's very easy when the patient's 30, the teeth are bleached, and then it's all quite straightforward. And I'm very comfortable in the anterior zone with Cerec, but when it's a single central and there's crack lines and translucency, potentially the worst case scenario is you've got a very, very dark stump and very, very low value translucent teeth. And it's like, well, I haven't got a lot to play with here. Wow. So that's when I would tend to refer, but it's very rare, to be honest. I get anxiety if I have to send something off to the lab. Like I much prefer being in control of everything. Like one of the hidden amazing benefits of Cerec is that contacts nowadays, and this comes with a knowledge of how the system works as well, and actually it makes you so much better at contact point control when you're making the restoration yourself, in how you prep and how you look at the teeth next door. But the contact points are just always dialed in, like bang on. And I remember that like heart-wrenching feeling when you get something back from the lab, you try it in, it's an open contact, and you're like, oh my God, so annoying. Which is probably my dodgy impression technique, I know.
So you sort of, in terms of what you said there, in terms of the anteriors, for people who aren't doing cerec or don't really know about it, obviously you've said that's a difficult situation because you're doing yourself the characterization, things like that. So for people who don't know, can you just give us a little sort of run through of the process of cerec?
Yeah, absolutely. So you scan the patient in as opposed to doing a traditional impression, and you then will design the proposal on the software. The software has got AI built into it now and deep learning, so it's very, very good at generating a proposal of its own accord. You have to draw the margin, but it automatically tries to find the margin for you now as well. So since I started, they've slowly been removing the parts that I have to do, which is great. So you scan the patient in, you design the restoration, you manage the contact point, and you can change the morphology as you wish. And then it's milled out of a solid block of porcelain, or composite, or PMMA, or hybrid materials, which I'm also a fan of, or zirconia. And then you can either, depending on the materials you've decided to use, you can either just hand polish it. So something like Empress Multi, for example, Empress CAD, you can just hand polish, or you can stain and glaze it, depending on the case. And I can show you some cases of that later on where I've hand polished it and it still looks great. Or you need to, for example, something like Emax, you need to put it through the furnace and crystallize it, strengthen it, and turn it into a tooth-colored restoration. And then you bond it in as per normal with a ceramic.
And what's the sort of time process? I know because it's sort of a same-day crown. So what is the actual time process of that? And how does I tend to cost into clinical time?
So I tend to book out 2 hours for one of these restorations, and that will tend to be around sort of 45 minutes for preparation. I'm pretty fussy with my preps, obviously, and then about 10-15 minutes for scanning and design, getting the block, choosing the shade, etc. Then 15 minutes to mill, 10 to 15 minutes. My new prime mill can do Emax in 5 minutes, but the software's not been released yet. And then depending on how many units you're doing, between 15 to 25 minutes for the staining and glazing. And then for me, about half an hour to fit the restoration. So it's about a 2 hour protocol. I'll book 2 hours for a cerec. If I need to see a whitening tray fit or an emergency, this is in pre-COVID times, or if I've got a surgery free now, I'll still do it. Then I will squeeze that into the sort of the milling time or the staining and glazing time. So that's how you can make it a bit more efficient. But I'm not a massive fan of rushing these things. I mean, if I wanted to, I could do it in an hour, no problem at all. Like you can mill it in enamic, it takes 5 minutes to mill, polish it. You can be as quick as you want to be, I think. But if you want quality, then you need to practice a bit of the whole slow dentistry ethos.
I mean, 2 hours is great because I'm probably looking over the course of a conventional, me doing onlay prep, crown prep, whatever. My clinical time across the 2 visits in 2 weeks is probably going to be 2 hours. So
yeah, and the beauty is it's no provisional to worry about, which
stressing about that onlay.
Yeah. I mean, I never struggled with onlay provisionalization. I always used polyF, and it always worked beautifully. I love polyF. Temp bond, forget about it. It's just awful. But anyway, I don't have to worry about that anymore. I very rarely have to provisionalize unless I'm doing a long-term provisional situation, which I'll normally actually mill that out of milled PMMA, like TelioCAD from Iberclaw is a really nice one. So if I'm doing like an immediate chairside bridge post XLA, then I'll take the tooth out, scan the patient in, and then mill the PMN. And there's some really nice studies actually from Marcus Blatz and his team over at the University of Penn on hemidesmosomal attachment onto milled PMMA surfaces versus chairside polished Luxatemp like traditional provisionals, which is quite interesting, especially around implants. It's quite interesting, like quite important stuff.
And then obviously it's quite a good thing for, I guess, for patients, marketing wise, it's efficiency, it's same day crowns.
It's just a much better journey, isn't it? I mean, I know I'm talking to the impression master here, but
I scan for Crown and Bridge, so
I don't know, yeah, but like no one really, apart from you, like no one really enjoys an impression. Certainly not on the receiving end. I mean, both my parents are dentists, so I used to have my alginates for my gum shields taken on the kitchen table. So I think maybe it's that trauma from an early stage that led to me going digital so early. But no, I mean, once the patient's had the experience of a cerec, with regards to the no impression and the same day functionality of it, it's obviously a much more modern journey for them to go through, I think. And sometimes provisionals are great, and sometimes I will still provisionalize if I'm questioning the vitality of the tooth and I want to slow things down. I had a student in one of our parlour ambassadors in with me this week, and I was saying to him that's one of the biggest things for me that I learned as I matured as a dentist is stop trying to get to the solution immediately. Like slow things down, just charge for a dismantling appointment. Don't feel that you have to guess the restorability of a tooth when it's got an MCC on it, and then you have to like sit the patient up and you're like, sorry, Mrs. Jones, like the tooth can't be saved. It's like if you actually just slow things down a bit, then you give yourself same with treatment planning. Like I used to always try and treatment plan with the patient in the chair, NHS checkup, do a huge treatment plan. It's like that's a really bad idea. Like that's where you're going to make mistakes. If you slow it down and just bring them back another day, your life becomes so much easier. Yeah.
So in those kind of cases, are you still milling it with the cerec and
normally, yes, because I hate making provisionals.
Yeah.
because I don't do it enough anymore. Like I look at like Minish's provisionals and George's provisionals and the care and love they put into them, and it's like, I mean, I respect that massively, and I do genuinely believe that the quality of your provisional says a lot about you as a dentist. But when I can just mill it in 5 minutes, it's and as I say, with the refinement that comes with that, it makes a lot of sense just for me to do that.
And is there a sort of availability in the software where, say, you've designed it, are you able to mill it in PMMA if you're concerned, save that, and then if all's hunky-dory, you can change it over and mill it in Emacs as well?
Exactly that. This week, I had a patient with an old gold crown. It was like, is it borderline irreversible pulpitis? And I was like, look, let's just pop a temporary on there. I milled it in Tetric CAD just because that's what I have, which is a straight up composite block.
Sorry? Is it Ivoclar?
Ivoclar as well, yeah. And just stuck it on with poly-F, see how you get on, and then if there's no problems, then she's booked in just for a half an hour fit, basically. So it was a full coverage crown already. And so hopefully it will just be a question of off with one and on with the other, which is a nice, straightforward protocol.
And you can have it ready to go already because you just print it off and
pre-milled, yeah.
Mill it out, yeah. Job done.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then what else? What other? Is it just Crown and Bridge? Is there more that you can do with the? I think you've mentioned about a post. Things like that. Is that cerec stuff, or is that getting a bit of?
Yeah. No, well, I'll show you this case, shall I? Because I quite like this case. I don't know whether I'll just. Can I flip my camera on this? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's my basketball net. Okay.
How's your dunking?
Yeah. That's going to be. Is that too high or is that okay?
That's looking all right. Yeah.
Maybe I'll just whack it on this.
There we go. We've got the behind the scenes of One Small
Change. The podcast. Yeah, exactly.
If guys, if anyone has questions, by the way, as we're going through, please just pop them in the comments. Mike Gregory Dentures just say that he loves cerec in the days when he did AGPs. He is sadly retired from the AGP now. But, I think he tried the gown on once and was like, "No, it's not for me."
Not for me, yeah. So yeah, this is just sort of a standard cerec prep just to show you the protocol. This is quite nice, actually. You can actually scan with the dam still on. So basically, you pre-scan and then you cut out the section that you're going to dam. and then just if you've got enough reference points and you isolate enough teeth, you can get them to stitch, which is great because obviously when you've had dam down, then you take it off, take an impression, it normally bleeds a little bit. So this just gives you really nice isolation for your scan. And then that's just sort of a standard Emax. You see nice blended margin with a high translucency there. With a quadrant dentistry, there's the scans there. These are a full coverage, unfortunately. But there you can see that's how it's milled in the sort of purple phase and then crystallized and just converted into 3 nice Emax crowns there.
Alan says it's all about that dam scanning.
I
don't know if it means rubber dam scanning or dam with an M, but
he's like, oh god, he's about dam scanning again. These are just a few indirect composite. I won't show you these; are a bit boring, but
little
I do like indirect composite for sort of larger sort of inlay onlay type restorations. Okay, this is quite a fun case. This is an influencer. She came in with just a non-vital upper right one, lovely frenal piercing there as well. But yeah, so we did. This is quite nice because we basically did some bonding, and we did because she had a veneer already. We did a same day
as part of the bonding.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is because we used Empress Multi and Empress Direct Composite, we were able to match the luster and the optical properties really nicely. And this is the beauty of this is just hand polished, but you see because I'm in control of everything and because she's whitened, it's all quite straightforward to match. Very difficult to match direct and indirect.
It's quite good, isn't it, for when you're doing that kind of. As you say, you're doing a bonding case, but you need a veneer as part of it rather than having all the bonding done and then. Yeah,
there's a lot more to think about. Whereas I just get this is the same thing. We got a digital wax up done by Phil Reddington. This one I printed on my Photon printer. Photon printer is a great printer to buy, by the way, if you're a young dentist, don't have a big budget for these sort of things. I think it's like 400 quid on Amazon, and puts out a really nice resolution print actually. I'm a bit lazy. I can't really be bothered with 3D printing anymore, but it is. I just get the lab to do it, but it is practical. So again, in this case, we bonded upper 3 to 3 apart from upper right 2, and then milled out the Empress Multi crown on this one, and that's her before and after there. So again, it's just quite nice to be able to be in such control of luster and outcomes.
And is there doing that similar sort of thing with bonding and a single veneer? Have you used it for sort of more like posterior, wear cases where maybe you're doing some anterior composite but some posterior sort of cuspal coverage, or is that a little bit
with regards to copying a wax up, or just in general?
In general, but yeah, I guess probably you'd be wanting to have a wax up because designing, I don't know, 6 posterior units or something is probably quite tough.
Well, I mean that three posterior. The thing is, when you chunk it up, I feel bad that you're looking there. When you chunk it up in the way that you can do with cerec, if you're just doing 3 at a time in each quadrant, like let's say you're doing upper 5, 6, 7 or something on both sides, because you can just split the mouth and maintain the vertical. It's quite. The 3 units, the software is perfectly capable of doing the design for you. Okay. So it's pretty good in that way. But anyway,
because you're not altering the occlusion, it's able to work that all out.
Well, if you're opening the vertical anteriorly with the composite anyway, then that's going to stabilize the vertical position, and then you've got the space at the back you just restore into the space that you've made available with the composite.
Fine.
It's probably the way that I would manage that sort of case.
Mike just asked a quick question here.
Yeah.
Are you raising the cervical margins up to gingival level with restorative materials and then prepping? I.e., are you keeping your cerec margins super gingival, or are you happy prepping subgingival with them?
Well, it depends on the case. I ideally would, if we're talking about posterior units, I ideally would like to leave my margin as high and dry as I can do. But but very much depends on the situation. If it's a root treated premolar, then I'm probably going to bury the margin so that any discoloration doesn't become apparent. If it's a vital tooth with decent tooth structure, then most of my restorations are onlays and not full coverage crowns, if that's the question.
I think that's a good answer anyway, isn't it?
So yeah, this is quite a cool case. So this chap had some pretty badly restored, not pretty badly restored, pretty badly broken down teeth. As you can see, 4 crowns on the incisors. Took them off, and this is what we found underneath. So pretty poor substrate. He was desperate to try and save them. Upper right one really lacking in ferrule, but as I say, he was desperate for us to have a go. Really didn't want to go down the implant route. So what we decided to do was basically utilize the 22mm depth of scanning on the prime scan, and actually scan the internal of the root canal space. So you can see it's got a really accurate internal scan there, all the way down right to the base where you can see the GP's been sealed off. Then what I did is I milled this out of, this is a Namek, so it's got a modulus of elasticity pretty similar to dentine, which from a biomimetic principle point of view made sense to me, given that I'm replacing dentine.
Yeah.
So completely custom to the internal of those teeth. And you can imagine, like, if you had a stock fiber post there, how much resin lute you're going to need to fill that space. I'm definitely not a fan of metal posts in this sort of scenario, where yes, it's going to give you rigidity, but you're also going to get a fractured root, and then my resulting future implant's going to be a nightmare. So this, I think, is a really nice compromise between those two. So we bonded those in, and then re-prepped and scanned them again, milled for Emax crowns, and then those are the 4 Emaxes in position there. Yeah, pretty decent. I think I did this case about at least 2 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago now. Yeah, it's
and the upright one's still there.
Yeah. I'm sure at least one of them's still there.
22 mils is impressive. That's a long way down.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, the depth of scan on the prime scan blows my mind every time I see it. Like, because I do a lot of scanning for implant cases, and you can scan the internal fixture head of an implant, which is just mad. And I'm sure soon we won't have to be using scan flags or anything like that anymore. We'll be able to just scan the inside of the implant and then have a restoration made to it. We're not quite there yet.
Not quite. I mean, that does bring us on to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which was implant stuff. So I know you're doing you're sort of doing more and more of it, aren't you? I know I saw you did your first sort of full arch cases recently, is that right? And
yeah, that was I actually reviewed one of them today. I completed those, I think it was July.
So in terms of the implant stuff, you're doing it all guided, always have? What's your implant journey been like?
So my implant journey started, I'll tell you a funny story. I came out of uni, always wanted to do implants. Like when I was at King's, I used to shadow Lloyd Searson and the Palmer brothers, Jerry Kwok, like anyone I could get some implant visuals on, I was in there. So I always knew implant surgery was something I was really excited about. In my young, sort of boisterous self, I thought I could come straight out of uni and just start an implant course. And I was at the bar at BACD conference, I think it was in Manchester, in my VT year. And I was chatting with Dev Patel, who at that point ran the Eastman course. I don't know if he still runs it, on implants. And I was like, Dev, I'm going to do your course next year. He's like, no, you're not. And he was like, no, you've not got the experience to be doing the course yet. Like, go and do some other training, get your restorative work up, get your occlusion knowledge up. And that was really good advice, actually. And I give that same advice to all of the young dentists who say the same thing to me now, because implants seem really easy. And sometimes they are really easy in some ways, but they're only easy if you really understand what's going on. And so I'm still learning now, and I've been restoring implants for like, I don't know, 8 years, and placing for the last 5 or so.
Patricia agrees with you. I agree with you too. I mean, I enjoy the implant, learning about the implant stuff. I'm looking to do a bit of restoring with Nick's stuff soon when he's, as I said, was saying earlier, when he's finished his book and stuff. But the placing side of it, I think the more I look at his stuff, I'm just there like, it's going to be a long old road until I'm anywhere near.
Yeah, exactly. But it's all about just building blocks and just like building one step at a time. And if you do it in that way, like it is, you offer yourself up less to litigation and stress, which I think is really, really important in your early stages. Like having really stressful, traumatic events early in your career can ruin your career. So it is really important that you build it up with a strong foundation of postgraduate education and mentors. Like even for these full arch cases that I did recently, I knew that I could do them on my own. I wasn't worried about that. I was working with a great technician. I knew exactly what I was doing. I planned it within an inch of its life for like a month. And I actually was doing for both cases back to back.
It's a good day.
But no, 2 separate days. The whole day. But both, 2 days back to back. But I still brought Stefano Conti, who's an incredible dentist from Italy, brought him over to mentor me through the case. And he also mentored all the planning side of things beforehand as well, just because you just want that. You want those first experiences to be solid. But yeah, to my implant journey started straight out of VT. I went into a practice called Enfield House in Teddington. It was actually a Mallow clinic when I started, from Paolo Mallow collaboration, but it's owned by a restorative consultant called Harpal Chana, who was sort of my implant mentor, very much sort of gave me a nice framework to build up from, referring to him, shadowing every referral, starting to restore multiple units, starting to restore full arches, and then eventually, towards the end of my time at that practice, starting to place on my own there. And then after I left there, obviously placing in my own practice, and now placing every week, really.
And at what point did you start doing guided stuff, digital planning?
So my training wasn't guided. Actually, that's not quite... I pushed a lot of the guided stuff early on because I was already very digital, and I'd seen how digital was being used, and so I sort of had that mindset about me. But my original training was just traditional placements, and I think that's really important as well, to know how to place without a guide in case your guide doesn't fit, or in case, which thankfully, touch wood, has never happened. But I'm sure it will do one day. But also, just if the clinical situation is not what it seems on the CBCT scan, you need to be able to think on your feet and place it brain guided at the same time. But as I say, thankfully now, with the accuracy of the guides and correct planning and safe planning, it's rare that situation presents itself. But I started basically just freehand. My training, my official training was with Corey Ferran, Fazila Khan Osborne, and Zaki Kanan on their Implant Academy course, that London Implant Academy course, that was, I think, 22 days over a year. I placed about 14 implants on that course, all my own patients that I brought up from the practice. I don't think they run it anymore, unfortunately, but I think Fazila is still running her courses. I then went on to do Fazila's advanced course as well, and was placing Megagem, which is a great, I still do place a bit of Megagem, it's a great implant system. Then just started doing pilot hole guides. I actually went to see Adam Nolte in Manchester with Eddie. It must have been 2016, I guess, 17. Started with pilot hole guides, planning on SMOP software, which is a really, really good software. Hugo Petrau, I'm sure I've massacred his surname there, but he's a really, really knowledgeable technician in the field of guide planning, because there's just so much nuance. Like, I would not recommend personally, lots of people do, but I would not recommend starting your implant journey by planning your own implant cases on Blue Sky Bio. Like, yes, it's free, but there's so much nuance to this. And like, if you're really, really techie and you really understand implant dentistry, then yeah, you can do it on your own for sure, save some money, super. But for me, like, working with a digital technician, it just makes life so much easier, so much safer, so much more predictable. So yeah, and there's, as I said, there's a lot of nuance with regards to like sleeve height, drill height, different drills, different drill kits, like how wide the sleeve needs to be on the interproximal of the teeth next door, and lots of different stuff like that. So so yeah, that's why I started with pilot hole guides, which is okay. And then with the Mega Gen kit, I started doing fully guided, with the implant being placed through the guide, which is really important, especially for anterior immediate cases. And then obviously in latter years, multiple units, and now moving into the full arch stuff, which is still fully guided.
Yeah. And what's the sort of workflow like that for you? Is it, initial, what's the scans are you taking? How are you designing it? You said what software?
Yeah, I'll show you a few cases, shall I? I've got some on here. Okay, this is like an old school case. Let me just whiz this around. Peloton in the background there.
This live is brought to you by Peloton.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, this is quite an old case, but so yeah, basically my flow is I'll see the patient for a consultation, we'll have a chat, I'll send them to get a CBCT at the local orthodontist has a really good quality CBCT scanner just down the road. I'll then bring them back to chat through the CBCT, make sure everything's appropriate. Then I'll get a prime scan at that stage, and then convert that into an STL file, and then get my lab tech to merge the STL with the DICOM, either on SMOP or more latterly, I'm placing a lot of Sweden Martina. So it's done on a software called Real Guide. Then the implant position is decided upon. This is a Mega Gen, so we place it subcrestally, so below the bone crest. And as I say, this is a pilot hole guide. So basically, we're just going to be drilling doing the first osteotomy with the guide, and then you take the guide out and you place the rest of you widen the osteotomy with a freehand approach. So this is the placement. I very rarely place flapless. I do occasionally if there's certain criteria met, but I will tend to raise a flap, mainly because it gives you better soft tissue around the buccal. Otherwise you're sacrificing soft tissue for the simplicity, which is not ideal. Also, I'll just go back slightly, these sutures, they're Ptfe sutures, they're called Cytoplast. They are so good. Like, if you're using Vicryl Rapide, just try these sutures out, and they are just like chalk and cheese. They're just, you get the patient back. I mean, this is immediately at surgery. Yeah, you get them back and you wouldn't know that they'd had anything. And then this is restored with cerec. So I won't go into all the nuts and bolt details, but in essence, I've probably got a case later where I show more of it, but you've got a titanium base here. You then mill the EMAX crown, which has got a prefabricated internal hole, the same dimension as the chimney of the tie base, and then you bond it together extraorally, and then you place it in that way. Now, that's really easy to do if the implant's in the right position. And you can see here the screw hole coming straight out the middle. If your implant's all over the place, i.e. you're not placing guided, and even here I've gone slightly to the mesial, in my opinion. I would like the implant to be a little bit more cranked up, but again, it was pilot hole guided. But if your access hole's in the correct position, then it's really easy to restore with cerec, because you can use a stock titanium abutment. These ones from Mega Gen have got a 2mm cuff height, which I really like. so 2 millimeters away from the fixture head with the metal work. And yeah, it's a really predictable workflow, which I'm a big fan of.
That's where I wasn't sure if you were doing cerec for implant stuff, because you need that whole abutment interface and bonding that. But that's relatively simple, is it?
Yes. Yeah, as I say, if the implant's in the right place, then it's simple. If the implant's in a bad place, then you're going to get a horrible emergence, or it's just not going to go down.
And even if you're not doing cerec, your technician will hate you if it's in the wrong place as well.
Yeah, and you may well have to do cement retained or an angulated screw channel or something like that, which just adds complexity, cost, and just gives an inferior result. So this is quite an interesting case, actually. So this is actually one of my early days cases. I don't even think I placed this guided. But what we did is we scanned the case at the time of surgery, then milled a milled PMMA hand polished custom healer that we bonded onto a tie base, and then placed that at the time of surgery. Came back 3 months later. You can see already the emergence forming up really nicely there. And then that's the soft tissue profile that you come back to, which is just a beautiful thing to see. And then we scan in again. This is the bonding protocol onto the titanium base. I get my nurse to do most of this now, which is really nice. And then that's the final restoration in position there. Little tip when you're restoring implants, I use OMC, OLC, or ODC from Venus Pearl. So it's the opaque, light chroma, opaque, medium chroma, opaque, dark chroma. It blocks out the grayness of the axis cavity really nicely. Bit of Ptfe underneath, and it works super well. So yeah, that's quite a nice little case. Again, I don't know how many
the healing was always my favourite. When I was doing I was doing sort of shadowing with Nick when I started at Woody, and take the healing abutments out, and you just get that beautiful
there's something very nice about it. So this is quite an interesting case as well. Again, I was speaking to you before the call about how, well, again, it goes back to our point on restorative work around implants. It's really easy to look at a hole and say, oh, I can stick a screw in there, job done. That's where most people get into trouble, in my opinion, because almost every implant case that I do ends up being a multidisciplinary mixed restorative surgery case, because there's normally a reason that they've lost their tooth. And that's a really important question to ask, is how did you lose this tooth? Because if it's because the tooth fractured, well, what do you think is going to happen to your implant unless you deal with their guidance or deal with the way that their teeth are interacting with each other? So this case, for example, you can see severe parafunction. You can see that upper left one is really ridiculously proclined, and the root's actually fractured on it. So I could never leave lowers like that and put an implant in on the upper. I know lots of people have done, because I've seen the work, but that for me is just not good planning. So in this case, we milled an immediate provisional restoration, which we bonded on, and then did some Invisalign, aligned all the lower anteriors there. I think I did a socket preservation on this one as well, because we were waiting a bit before we put the implant in. And then again, this is a pilot hole guided one. I would definitely do this fully guided now. Scan in on the same day, milled PMMA provisional, and then we replaced the veneer. There you can see that nice soft tissue again with the milled PMMA. And again, that's what I was talking about earlier with that fixture head impression. You can see it all the way down into there. It's so cool. And then that's the design, and then the final restorations. No papilla left in the interproximal, unfortunately, but a really nice case. And you see the lovely stippling of the soft tissue there, post-operatively, looking really nice.
And that's cerec as well on the final.
And it's all chairside, all manufactured in-house. As I say, I mean, there's two things about cerec that are undervalued. One of them is how much better a dentist it makes you, because There's no hiding from your crappy prep. Like, especially when you're a young dentist, like, yeah, you're doing it through loops, but zoom right in and look at the prep, and you can see that you've left a J margin, or that it's undulating, or you've not captured the interproximal in enough detail as you should have done. And then think about what the technician would have been saying about you otherwise. But you've got to make the restoration. So you very quickly learn that your transition lines on the prep need to be smooth, that you can't leave J margins, that you need the contact points of the two teeth next door to not be overhanging where your prep is. And you need to understand path of insertion and all of these things. Like, I see you learn them so much faster.
Because you're making your own life harder.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see it in real time. And the second thing is just the joy of actually creating your own restorations is, I know it's something that my parents used to do when they were at dental school, and my dad still talks about, my dad's actually just started making jewelry and casting his own gold again, which is highly dangerous, but he used to do it at dental school, and I think he's always loved it. But there is something really nice about hand polishing your restorations, trying them in, changing the luster, doing some staining and glazing chairside. Like that is a really good service to offer. And I think sometimes cerec gets a bad rep aesthetically as an inferior option. And for sure, I am not Phil Reddington. I am not choose your non-DAS or whatever, one of these top techs. But you can achieve really, really good aesthetic restorations with enough hand touch, knowledge of anatomy, using good software, taking good scans. You can get very, very nice outcomes with enough passion put into it, I think.
And a lot of labs now as well are milling, and they're doing it. That's exactly what they're doing anyway. So it's like, as you say, maybe you're not as skilled at it as a technician, but actually a lot of the labs are designing it on software, milling it, and
staining and glazing it. Because why would you not want monolithic Emax on an upper six? Like, why would you not want it everywhere? I love monolithic Emax. Like, there are certain cases where the value can drop a bit, and it's not, an Empress is better, but it just doesn't break. Like, I've maybe had one monolithic Emax break in my whole career. It just doesn't happen. It's just a perfect strength and very, very good aesthetics. It is a wonderful material. We're very lucky to have it, I think. So this is not sponsored by either club, by the way. I've spoken about them a lot tonight.
Yeah, well, we'll have to balance it up and mention some other people. Now, the last, we got a question there. Do you think it's lost time, milling and staining? So Dr. Matt Official there, so he might have missed it earlier where he said you did it in 2 hours, which that was my initial thing, is a lot of chair time out, but if you're doing
what's the rush, guys? Like
you're charging for the time as well, and the service of it being a same day thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Charge what you want to, but it is a better service. And for me personally, the predictability of the contacts being bang on, the occlusion being bang on, the shade being bang on, like all of those things, I think personally are much more predictable chairside in my hands anyway.
And that's what it comes down to with a lot of these sort of things, isn't it? It's knowing what works well in your hands, and having that accountability, as you say, it sits better with you, that you know that you're going to be able to do it.
I'm a control freak, so I love it. I love being in control.
I mean, the third topic that we were going to be chatting a bit about was some DSD, but I did have a couple of people asking questions about composite work. I know that's what you do a lot of, and Harry's always going on about your composite stuff. So is there a bit of sort of smile design that you're doing with your composite works, or I think we'll chat through some composite stuff as well, because I'm sure people want to hear it. Yeah,
well, I mean, you saw earlier that case with the digital wax up, and bringing that in to guide the case. If it's a complicated case where I'm raising the vertical, or we're making big occlusal changes to the whole mouth, then that's what I'm tending to lead more towards a digital wax up. I will do a trial smile where there's question marks over widening teeth. I have a lot of diastema patients through my early influencer work. So I still get another 2 today. I worked with this influencer in like 2017. They still come, but oftentimes the space management is very complex. DSD in collaboration with Invisalign is great for that, because you can pre-plan the restorative and move the teeth within that digital wax up, which is a really nice workflow. And I've done that for a couple of cases now, where there's just it's just so much movement, you just can't really visualize where things are going to be, and you want to make sure that you plan the Invisalign appropriately. But to be honest, because I'm a control freak, I'm most comfortable just mocking stuff up in composite freehand. And if I need to book in an hour to do that, and then take a scan of that, and then have that 3D printed if I need it for later, then I'm perfectly happy to do that. Most of my bonding cases, my sort of ABC Invisalign whitening bonding cases, are all freehand composite, and I feel much more comfortable with that, to be honest.
Well, I mean, do you want to jump into? Have you got any little cases you want to go through with the composite stuff, or
I don't have that much. I've got loads and loads of cases of just before and afters, but I don't know how much value that would be for your listeners, your watchers. But I don't know. Oh, this is quite a nice case. This is a nice. I have a periodontist in the practice now. Actually, I have 2. Mitchell Chard has started with me, so that's quite a nice one. Again, we did a digital wax up on that first in a trial smile, just to validate the lengthening of the case.
So with your digital wax ups, is that lab based, or are you doing parts of that yourself?
No, I don't. I'm not. I had a little play with Mesh Mixer back in the day, but I'm not really. It was just too much for me. So I'll either use Eddie Marcoux, Nexus Dental make a good digital wax up, or Phil Reddington at Beaver Dental, or I'll use the sort of official DSD lab if it's one of these combination cases. But that's quite expensive. But yeah, I mean, I think the key things for me with composite, just to give a few tips. I mean, this is quite a nice case that we finished recently. I don't know how well this is coming up on the screen, but I think the key things for me with composite are, firstly, I love Empress Direct. I think everyone does. Everyone who does bonding cases loves Empress Direct because it's just a wicked material. Blobbing the composite onto the tooth before you do the as a shade matching tool, I think is really, really vital. And that's done immediately. First thing I do in the appointment before anything has a chance to dehydrate. And then shaping the composite on the tooth, not after you've cured it, is a vital tip that I learned from when I was at dental school. But it is really, really useful tip, because you see so many young dentists using soft flexes to try and create their primary anatomy, and that just leads to really flat, horrible looking teeth that just aren't natural. So 95% of my primary anatomy is done, and even some of the secondary is done with the composite still unset and then cured in the correct position. And then the final thing is the polishers, which for me is the Diatec spirals. I think Coltine sell them. And yeah, they're wicked. I mean, they just are so good in combination with the Empress Direct. You get such a great luster on the teeth, and it really lasts as well. Oh, and the final thing is I do a glycerin cure before I polish, which also tends to improve the polishing outcome. But you've had like far better composite people on here than me, so I won't bore everyone with the details on that. But I was saying to you before, I think composite for me, taking the mini smile makeovers out of it for a second, but using composite for things like canine risers, where you can see someone's parafunctional and they're breaking all their back teeth. It's just a really simple thing that you can have a conversation with the patient. You can explain it to them in layman's terms very simply, and you can provide so much more protection to their posterior teeth, or more importantly for you, your new restorations that you're putting in there, that's really, really important, I think. So I do so much composite around implants, around restorative work, just to try and protect things and give things better longevity, which I think is really vital.
Yeah, like you said it perfectly early. You know, these things have all happened for a reason, and you need to step back and look at the bigger picture before doing stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Perfect. I think we've covered all that we want to. If anyone has any last questions, well, we've got Simon here. That's ideal. But I know he's got a little one who needs to be put down and sleep through the night. Hopefully tonight.
Good luck with that one.
And while we're waiting on any other questions, now I promise you this isn't stolen from your podcast, okay? But which, guys, if you haven't listened to, you should give a listen. It's really good. So even like there's so much of it isn't clinical, but and your answer doesn't have to be clinical. But is there one small change? is there one thing that you do now that you wish you did earlier, that you knew earlier, or a tip for young dentists? You've given so many tips for young dentists already tonight, but what's the main one, do you think?
Well, I've got a good one that I haven't mentioned already. I don't know if it's the main one, but it's certainly one that I think holds a lot of value, which is just over communicate. Make sure you have time in your diary to be as pessimistic about the outcome that you're going to be delivering as possible. Like, I think that's probably the thing that shocks the students that come in and shadow me, that I'm so negative before the process. Like, every single patient I do a crown on is pre-warned that they are most likely going to need an endo here, or the bonding and how long it's going to last. Like, just be really honest. I think everyone, when they're young dentists, they don't have the confidence, and so they're trying to put on a show. And so sometimes what that leads to is a lack of honesty and communication and understanding that you're dealing with another human being who you can actually talk to, and they will understand things if you take the time to actually explain it to them in terms they understand. So if you're not an effective communicator, then learn how to become one, because everyone thinks that I came out at birth as like a public speaker. But my mum showed me a video for my 18th birthday the other day, and I literally had to be like prized up to like give, even if I say a few words at my 18th. Now it has to be like a Tuesday, and I'll want to give a speech at a dinner party. But I love public speaking. I love doing stuff like this, and I don't really need to prepare for it because I just like talking honestly and openly about stuff. But that's all really helpful when I get back into the surgery, because I'm very honest with my patients. I'm very negative because I like to manage their expectations. And then obviously you always strive to overachieve on what they expect. But I think that's just such a better way. And if you lose a few patients because you've been overly negative, then that's a really good thing, because you probably didn't want those patients. Like, be as negative as you can do before you start, with my advice.
Yeah. Are you for every clinical course do a soft skills course kind of person? Do you follow that kind of?
No, I wouldn't go that hard. I mean, no, I wouldn't go that far, because there's a lot of clinical skills to learn. But it's definitely really important. And I think if you've got it, like you're clearly a good communicator. You're on here chatting about dentistry all the time. I'm sure that reflects back into your clinical work. It can be learned at the chair side. You don't have to get on a stage and do it, but there are great things out there like Toastmasters and public speaking, things like that, which I think are really useful skills for dentists to get on board with.
Yeah. Patricia's asked a question there. Is iTero a good scanner for implants? We use iTero Nick uses iTero for all of his stuff, and he loves that. Your Prime Scan, because you've got the selection. So what do you use for what scanners do you use for certain things? Or
I don't know how to use the iTero. I've never used it. So
that's
my
Harry's toy, is it?
Well, no. I mean, we have a treatment coordinator, and my nurse is very proficient at scanning with that. So yeah, so that tends to be the Invisalign scanner, like almost solely for me, which is great. It's by far the best for that. But for me, the Prime Scan, it's got a slightly smaller head. That I don't know what the latest iTero is like, but I think that the Prime Scan is more accurate, in my opinion. I don't know exactly what the stats are on that, but that's just my anecdotal feeling on it. So for all restorative work, I use the Prime Scan. For all Invisalign work, I use the iTero. Whitening trays, night guards, retainers, that sort of thing, all on the iTero. but mostly restorative is done on the prime scan.
Yeah,
but it is a great scan. As I said, that's just my personal preference. That's what I'm used to. And the prime scan sits in my surgery. The iTero sits in the facial aesthetics room, where the treatment coordinator has her consults and stuff. So that's just the way that we work.
I think it comes down to if you're lucky enough to have the two separate ones, then that's great.
Yeah.
But maybe if you're doing a bit of everything, as you say, if you're doing more Invisalign than you are implant stuff, you're probably better off with an iTero because it's all. You can do it with the prime scan, the Invisalign, but obviously
no, you can't.
You can't do it at all. You can't even translate.
No, they all had a little paddy with each other, and you could scan with the Omnicam. And then they brought out the new scanner, and they were like, "No, we're not doing this anymore."
You got to bring them together and sort.
Yeah, I know.
So there you go. If you want to do lots of Invisalign, you can only afford one. Then you're going to have to go down another route.
That's basically the situation. And then if you want to be able to manufacture your restorations chair side, then really still the main option is cerec, in my opinion. I don't know if the programmable one's actually out yet, but they've been saying it's going to come out for the last 3 years. I'm sure COVID hasn't helped.
Yeah.
But there's no, in my opinion, there's no real competition for. There's hacks for like really geeky people, like or people who have in-house labs and that sort of thing. But for a real Apple, you give it to your dad. I actually have done because my dad. You can give it to your dad and he knows how to use it. Like that is. That's what cerec provides. It has the least steep learning curve, I would advise.
Perfect. I think that's answered everyone's questions. Cheers so much for coming on and doing this. I won't keep you too much more on your Thursday night. And thanks for everyone for stopping by. And we'll catch you next week for some perio. We're going to finish off all the sort of restorative bits with some perio next week with Rena. But no, cheers. Thanks again, my man. And see you at BACD conference in November.
See you there. Edinburgh, here we go.
Edinburgh, here we go.
Can't wait.
Cheers.
See you, mate.